Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to talk about a legal express lane, a shortcut for collecting a debt. It's called a payment order. And if someone owes you money and you have clear proof, this could be the difference between a long, painful court battle and getting things sorted out fast.
So, picture this. You're owed money, the proof is right there in black and white, but the idea of getting dragged into a complicated, drawn-out lawsuit, it just feels like a nightmare. You have to wonder, is there a better way? Well, in a lot of very specific cases, the answer is a big, loud yes.
And that solution is the payment order, or Amr al-Ada. You really should think of it as a legal express lane. It's a special exception carved out in the law, specifically designed to let you bypass the standard and, let's be honest, often super slow court process when you have a very clear-cut claim.
So, here's what we're going to break down for you in this explainer. First, we'll look at why this legal shortcut even exists. Then, what you actually need to have in hand to use it. We'll walk through the creditor's journey step by step, then flip it around and look at the debtor's really important right to object. And finally, we'll see what happens after an order is issued. Let's dive right in. All right, first up, why did they even create this procedure? Why not just make everyone go through the normal court system? Well, it really all boils down to one word: efficiency. The justice system needed a way to handle simple, straightforward debt cases quickly, without letting them get bogged down in the system for months or even years. And when you put the two side by side, the difference is, well, it's huge. A traditional lawsuit is kind of a catch-all. It's designed to handle all sorts of complicated disputes, with lots of hearings and stages. The payment order is the exact opposite. It's laser-focused. It's built for speed when the debt is already documented and clear.
But hold on a second. This shortcut isn't for every single situation. You can't just use it for any old claim you have. The law is actually super specific about the criteria you have to meet before you can even think about using this fast track.
And these requirements are strict for a good reason. Your evidence basically has to be bulletproof. The claim has to be proven in writing. It has to be for a very specific amount of money or for a particular item, like a car or a set number of goods. And this is crucial: the debt has to be due right now, not something that's due down the road. This also covers things like commercial paper, like a bounced check.
All right, so let's say you've checked all those boxes. Your claim fits the bill. What happens next? Let's walk through the 4 main steps a creditor takes to get a payment order. The process is really structured. It all kicks off with you formally demanding payment from the debtor. If that doesn't work, then you file a petition with the court. A judge takes a look at your request and your proof, and if they approve it, your last and very important step is to officially serve that order to the debtor.
The entire process really kicks off with one simple number: 5. This number represents the absolute first deadline, a waiting period that you cannot skip.
And here's what that looks like in practice. Before you can even file with the court, you must send a formal notice giving the debtor at least 5 days to pay up. Only after that time has passed can you submit your request, and that triggers another tight deadline. The judge has to make a decision within just 1 week. The clock is always ticking.
Okay, so once the judge issues the order, another critical number comes into play: 3. This number represents a window of opportunity for the creditor, a window that you absolutely cannot afford to miss.
That number stands for 3 months, and the law is crystal clear about this. You have exactly 3 months from the date the judge issues the order to officially serve it on the debtor. This isn't just a suggestion, it's a hard and fast rule. If you miss that deadline, the order becomes completely null and void. You're right back at square one.
So far, this all sounds pretty good for the creditor, right? But this isn't a one-way street. The law builds in some really important protections for the person who actually owes the money. So let's flip the script and look at things from the debtor's side.
The moment that order is served, a new clock starts ticking for the debtor. And they have a key number to burn into their memory: 10. Just 10 days. This is their one chance, their window of opportunity to challenge the order and have their side of the story heard.
So within those 10 days, the debtor is at a major fork in the road. They can file a reasoned objection, a TALM, which is like hitting the pause button. It stops everything and sends the case to a proper court hearing. Or they can do nothing.
And if they do nothing, the order becomes final, and they lose their chance to argue. Now, there are some pretty strict rules for this objection. You can't just write "I object" and call it a day. It has to be reasoned, meaning you have to explain why you're challenging it. And interestingly, the person who objects, the debtor, is suddenly treated like the plaintiff. And here's a big one. They absolutely must show up for that first hearing. If they're a no-show, their objection gets tossed out. Simple as that.
So what happens when that 10-day window slams shut, or after a judge actually rules on an objection? Well, that brings us to the end game of this whole process.
Basically, this is where it all comes to a head. Either the time to object has expired, or the objection has been heard and decided by a judge. At this point, the order really solidifies and gets its legal teeth. It's ready to be enforced.
And here's how it becomes final. If nobody objects, the order just stands. If an objection is filed and fails, that ruling on the objection itself can still be appealed. But once every possible door is closed and all appeals are exhausted, the order is final and enforcement can begin.
And this is a really powerful protection for the debtor. The simple act of filing that objection, that's a thallam, it works like an emergency brake. It stops any enforcement actions dead in their tracks until a judge has had a chance to hear the case. It's a key check and balance built into this otherwise very fast system.
Oh, and there's one more related tool we should touch on, called precautionary attachment. If a creditor is worried that the debtor might try to sell off or hide their assets, they can ask the judge to freeze those assets while they're waiting for the payment order to be issued. It's a way of making sure the property is still there when the legal process is over.
So, to wrap it all up with a quick summary, who's this for? It's for a creditor who has written proof of a specific debt that's due now. Why use it? To bypass a much slower, more complex lawsuit. The key deadlines to remember: the creditor has 3 months to serve the order, and the debtor has just 10 days to object. The whole point is to find that sweet spot, that balance between speed for the person who's owed money and fairness for the person who owes it.
And that really brings us to the heart of the matter. The payment order offers a quick, efficient path to justice, and that's incredibly valuable. But it leaves us with this fundamental question. In the rush for speed, how do you make sure that fairness doesn't get left behind? That is the constant tightrope that this law tries to walk. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.